Hey guys, welcome back. This is Storm with Honey Rock Acres, and I've been wanting to do a 2023 in review and really cover a lot of stuff that we got done last year. However, we are starting out 2024 with more chaos, as you probably saw in the last video, and it continues. And so the theme of this year so far has been automotive issues between the Gator, which is still down, my wife's car, which is now leaking oil, and my truck, and actually some of my relatives' vehicles having off and on issues. That seems to be a theme going right now. So I want to actually talk about it last year, but it's going to be a little bit different than how I was planning because I've got stuff I have to get done, and I'm just going to bring you guys along for the ride, and we're going to talk about it anyways because, well, that's just how things go. My most immediate issue is that my truck just been throwing some lights. It's a 2018 Sierra, and it's been throwing what I've come to learn is notorious StabiliTrak lights. And there's a plethora of potential reasons for it, but in my case, what I think the problem is a bad battery. So we'll see. I had an auto parts store test the battery. They said it was fine, but it doesn't seem fine to me. It doesn't seem like it's starting like it's supposed to. It starts, but it's struggling. And I've read that low voltage at startup can trigger a lot of the issues. And when we were leaving church Sunday, my dash lit up like a Christmas tree. And it got me home, and I even had to trust it and run some errands to, well, go get the battery. Have stuff tested, and then I'm also having to prepare because we might get our first snow for this winter season, and I can't have my truck both down and not have enough feed, so we had to pick up more feed for basically every animal and make sure that if we are snowed in that we're prepared for it. And as you can see, my wife's car has been leaving oil spots. I think I know what's wrong with hers, but it's gonna be a little bit difficult for me to get to it and fix it because I don't have a lift, and her car sits really low to the ground, and I may be able to get it jacked up and do it that way, but I'm contemplating actually just paying somebody on this one because I think it's the oil filter mounts into this plastic housing that bolts into the engine, and it's got gaskets, or not gaskets, it's got washers in it, and I think those washers have collapsed and are not working well because it doesn't leak once the car warms up, but it leaks like crazy when it first starts up and it's cold outside. So I don't know, we'll figure it out. And I'll also go ahead and apologize a little bit for both the lighting and the sound because the mic cover that helps protect from the wind got knocked off when I was moving the pigs and can't find it. So I've got another one that should be here soon. And it's kind of dark because I'm on the shaded side of the house in the middle of the day, and so the lighting sometimes not great. But again, you gotta do what you gotta do. Now, despite like all the chaos for the first of this year, I'm really excited about what's to come, and I'm gonna try to contain that and save that for another video because I really want to deep dive into what we have coming up because we're gonna try to focus a little more this year. We're getting pretty well established, and I've learned a lot of stuff, and it's time to kind of start to really take things in a direction. So we're going to talk about that later. But for this past year, we've had a really great productive year. Obviously we had our third child, Ada, and she is almost a year old already, which seems crazy. We've already been here on the property for a year and a half, which also seems crazy. It feels like we just moved in, and we've made great progress with all the animals. Lucille, what's up, girl? We've also had Lucille earlier this year. I guess last year now. And look at you, you're already almost grown up. We grew quite a bit this year. We doubled our flock size from about 20 chickens to about 40, which has been great. We also had our first piglets born on the farm. It was the first animal at all born on the farm, which has been an awesome learning experience, and it's been really cool for us. We also learned how to butcher ourselves. We butchered, well, chickens for the first time. We raised and butchered our own chicken. And we raised and butchered our own pigs. Both of which were a phenomenal experience. Now there's really two big notable things with that. First is that I learned that I could eat chicken again. Now, not just any chicken, but I did learn that I could eat the chicken that we processed here, which was awesome. And that pork is the best pork I've ever eaten in my life. And several people that I've shared it with would tell you the same. All right, so we're back inside because, per usual, it's windy as all get out there. I realized that most of that probably wasn't very audible, so we'll come back inside and do it. But good news is, got the battery in, and I don't know if it solves all the problems, but truck's definitely starting better. So if I was right and the low startup voltage was the issue, as I'd seen on some forums, then I think my problem may be solved, but we'll just wait and see. The big thing is to kind of summarize this past year is it was a lot of firsts. This year was mostly full of firsts. We first meat chickens, first piglets born, first time training livestock guard dog, lots and lots of stuff. And honestly, I'm extremely thankful for this past year. It's been a learning experience, and despite having some familiarity and some experience, growing stuff and working a little bit with animals, this year was huge on not just learning, but also gaining some confidence. For example, I was extremely intimidated about our first time, butchering the chickens and the pigs. And honestly, after getting through it, it's really not that bad. It's definitely a learning curve, but once you get kind of over the intimidation and maybe the emotional part of it, it's very doable at a homestead level. What's up, Twinkle? I hear you. Now there were, some downsides to 2023 as well. Because of how busy we were, and I know I've talked about it several times over the year, we basically lost the garden, most of the garden early in the year. We had a pretty good seed start, probably started them a little too early, based on what we had going here in the garage. But most of that did fine. Got everything in the ground. We didn't really lose a lot initially in the ground. But over the course of that first couple of months with a newborn, honestly, the garden ended up being mostly a disappointment. Lost most of it. There were a few mistakes I made, but the biggest thing was that we just didn't end up having the time to manage it. With learning how to manage time with a third child, and also our oldest being very involved. She's a very active child, and so we want her to continue to be involved in things. That took away from the garden. It ended up being just myself working on it. My wife did a little bit, but she couldn't really do a lot, and the kids are still a little young to get in there and do too much. So all in all, it was a disappointment, but I learned some valuable lessons. I over mulched. That was probably my biggest mistake. I over mulched it initially with mulch that had not broken down at all, and so it sapped the soil of nutrients as it was trying to break down. So that ended up being probably my first big mistake. And then my second one again was just not having the time to keep up with weeding it. So we ended up letting it go. We got a pretty good harvest of snap peas. We're definitely planting those again. Those were amazing. And the little, what do they call them from Gurney's? Candyland Red, little cherry tomatoes. Those were fantastic. And I'm not even a huge tomato person. At least I haven't been in the past. The more I've grown them myself, the more I'm coming around to them. So, you know, those were a couple that went well in the garden. We had a pretty good carrot turnout, even though we honestly were too lazy to go out and pick them and prep them and do all the things that you need to do. We just keep saying we were too busy, but that one was on me. I just didn't take the time to do it, and that was a real disappointment because we spent the time. So the garden is kind of a precursor to our next video. The garden is going to be a big focal point of this next year, because we want to make sure that if we're going to put the time and effort into it, that we get something out of it. Now, another kind of thing that came up, I said earlier we'd gotten up to 40 chickens. We're actually down to 39 now. Mr. T is no longer here on the farm. To put it bluntly, wouldn't stop trying to flog me, so we got rid of him. Hated to see him go. He was our first rooster. Raised him, from a couple days old. But at the end of the day, I can't have a rooster around that's going to be attacking me, and as my kids are wanting to go out there, especially in the springtime, I'm just not going to have it. So currently Petey's the only one on the farm, but I doubt that'll stay that way long term. And again, that'll be for what's coming up in this next year. Kind of the last big thing for 2023 was the finances part. So, currently we still primarily operate at more of a homestead level, and that's very intentional because I don't have the time or the means to kind of expand to like even a small commercial level. So while we're kind of building things up to potentially doing that, and I think that's still a goal of ours, this year we focused a lot on kind of the homestead level kind of build up and producing mostly for ourselves. And honestly, that was very successful. What I didn't factor into the finances, so I did track. I did lose January finances, so I've kind of estimated on January finances, both the income and the expenses. But at the end of the day, we ended up negative on the year. I think it was like $1,700. So considering everything we did, that's really not that bad. However, that doesn't include like purchasing the gator, which I also forgot to add. We added a gator this year, which has been both a great thing to have and also a very big frustration because now I'm down twice with it, which again, it's an older vehicle. It's kind of expected, but so the expenses don't include, purchasing the gator. The expenses don't include purchasing of the tractor. They don't include most of the garden expenses because we had not tried to sell anything. And as for now, we're not trying to set up like a market garden or do a CSA or anything like that. The garden is and was primarily just for our consumption and maybe giving some stuff to some friends and family. I might try to expand into selling at some point. I don't know what that would look like yet. I've spent very little time doing that. But so anyways, stop ranting. The garden stuff and pretty much everything around the garden, any hoses, any of the materials, all the seeds, the fertilizer, pretty much all of that is not included in our expenses, which would obviously make the number go up. So really the only two things that are covered on income were the money we made selling chicken eggs and the one pig that we sold. So we did really well considering that that's all we did. And I know most people will tell you there's no money to be made in eggs, and I would mostly agree that that's true. If you're kind of in a small to medium scale, you can make some money, but you're gonna, if you're paying yourself an income, that's gonna be a really low number, and I'm okay with that. The primary thing was to have an excess to make sure that we were provided for, and so the finances doesn't include like all the eggs that we ate and all the eggs that I gave away to people. So, you know, that's great. I think that's a good thing, actually. And the other thing that's also not included is the money we saved, not purchasing pork, you know, from where we butchered the pigs, or purchasing chicken where we butchered the chickens. So none of that stuff's really covered. So I didn't really like analyze our grocery bill and kind of see like, oh, okay, well, we saved X number of dollars. I do plan to go back for my own personal edification and kind of see, like, you know, around butcher times, did any of our grocery bills go down? But the reality is that our groceries, along with most people's, has just continued to trend upward. And even though we've cut back on things, we don't buy as much junk. We're trying to be a little healthier, which probably adds to that, because we're buying a little bit more expensive stuff because it's supposed to be healthier. But in a general sense, you know, you can kind of track it, and it's an upward trend. So it's really hard to calculate that number and get anything accurate and meaningful. So I'm not gonna share that, because I just think it could be misleading. To kind of wrap up, I think 2023 was a fantastic year for us. Even with, you know, losing the garden and not getting a lot out of that, there's a lot of lessons learned throughout the year with everything, with our pig moving system, our chicken moving system, you know, all the structures that we built. You know, there was a lot of great things. We did lose several chickens, you know, just some to Lucille, you know, some to, you know, just failing to thrive, you know, with our meat chickens, and a couple of the others. But overall, like, it was a great year. Really excited to see what 2024 brings us. And, you know, I'm not going to let the downsides of last year or how this year has started be a stain on it. So we're going to try to strive for doing better. You know, last year, this time, I had made several goals of being more organized, and you know, I don't even remember, you know, New Year's resolutions. I think I said this last year. I don't really like the idea of New Year's resolutions, because, as most people say, like, you don't make it past the end of January and you've already blown it most of the time. So, but setting goals, I think, is a good thing to do. And we did get a little bit more organized as I'm looking around. You know, we've achieved some of the goals we had. We wanted to successfully raise chickens and pigs, and again, that's all successes. So apologies on this kind of maybe scrambly thrown together video. It really wasn't planned to go this way, but we've had a lot of just kind of rough things happen. I really wanted to talk about 2023, and we're already a little over a week into, you know, 2024, and I didn't want to let that go. So you know, I appreciate you watching. Join us again soon. The next video should be talking about our goals for 2024. I'm going to try to sit down and really put some plans together and share with you guys. So anyways, thanks for joining. Have a good rest of your day, and we'll see you next time.